Given that Sir David Amiss was a political opponent of mine, a Conservative of a certain hue, I had remarkably good relations with him. In fact, on one or two things, maybe more than two, we agreed substantively and so had plenty to talk about virtually every day for almost 30 years when we'd pass each other in the corridor, sit down in the tea room, chink tea mugs with each other on issues that we agreed on. They were precious few, but those that we agreed on were significant issues. Once I made a speech opposing euthanasia in the chamber of the House of Commons, and Sir David Amiss warmly congratulated me on it because it was the beginning of the slippery liberal slope that I believed would lead to some canyons of horror. There were other issues too, animal cruelty, issues like abortion, issues like fire safety, issues like fuel poverty, on which Sir David Amiss had a point of view which was at least in touch with my side of the House. But I will remember him always as a champion of his constituency. He represented it for nearly 40 years. He represented two Essex constituencies, very similar in character. And he did so with an effervescence, almost a childlike effervescence, always demanding city status for his constituency. And I hope now that as a tribute to the fallen MP, that city status will now be extended to Southend. He was a cheerful, happy man. And that's why I think of the last moments, the last seconds of his life with particular blood-chilling horror. There he was, aged 69, a father of 5, a devoted husband and father, in a little room, in a church, in his constituency, sitting with his notepad and with his pen, ready to take down the details of constituents' problems. And with his customary zeal, I know that he would have pursued them to the end. And then into his room came a 25-year-old former constituent, now living in a rather ritzy part of London, Kentish Town, came in and allegedly knifed the old man 12 times, leaving him bleeding to death on the floor. No one to defend him, no one to help him. It is obscene that Sir David Amiss met that end. It is almost ridiculous that the alleged killer, and how often does this happen? It was said to be known to the security services, was said to have been referred, whatever that means, to the Prevent Anti-Terrorism, Anti-Extremism program, and yet was allowed to find himself in a small room with a 69-year-old MP and allegedly hack him to death. That's almost ridiculous. Where's the joined up writing in that? As I understand it, I could be wrong, but as I understand it, this man made an interview request in his own name for an appointment with Sir David Amiss MP, even though it was many years since he lived in the constituency. He allegedly told David's staff that he had newly moved back into the area. That means the parliamentary staff were dealing with him in setting up an interview. How is it possible that no system exists after what's happened in Britain over the last 10 years or more, because David Amiss's murder was not the first. Joe Cox's was not the first attempt at murder. Stephen Timms, a former minister in the Blair government, was multiply stabbed at his constituency in 2010. Nigel Jones, in his constituency, was attacked with a samurai sword and his office manager murdered with that sword, trying to protect him. How is it possible, after all of this, that no parliamentary system exists whereby such a person making an interview request, looking for an appointment with a defenseless MP, was not flagged by the security services who are listening to me right next door? What kind of idiots are you? If this man was so extreme that he was known to you, referred by you to an anti-terrorism program, how was he able to make an appointment to see an MP and then allegedly murder him? And one of the disturbing aspects of this whole affair is the way in which it is being used, not to force us to get to grips with an incipient and growing number of Islamist fanatic terrorists in Britain, but instead to close down anonymity on Twitter, as if this alleged killer was incited to allegedly murder David Amiss because he got angry on Facebook. What does it have to do with civility in political discourse? As the former Home Secretary said on television yesterday, we need to stop questioning politicians' motives. No, we will not. We, in a democracy, not only have a right to, yes, vitriolic criticism of the idiots that rule us and the bigger idiots that oppose the rulers. It's not just a right, it's a duty in a democracy to subject our ruling class of politicians and administrators to the most rigorous cross-examination, criticism, condemnation. But that's not what moved this alleged murderer. This alleged murderer was motivated by the murder cult that is ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Why is nobody talking about that? Why are we talking about people's posts on Facebook? There are two reasons why. Some of you will like one of them. Some of you will like the second one. The sensible of you will listen carefully to both of them. The first reason that we are not talking about the fact that there are tens of thousands of people of concern to the security services next door, walking among us, living among us, some of them harboring the wish, the bloodlust to do what this alleged killer did on Friday. The first reason is that we are in alliance as a country with some of these extremists in different parts of the world. You see, we supported them in Libya. We even harbored them in Manchester. And one of their sons murdered dozens of our children at the Manchester Arena. We supported them in Syria with a king's ransom of hundreds of millions of British taxpayers' money to Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the alphabet soup of Islamist extremist organizations. We gave them guns, we gave them money, and above all, we gave them endless propaganda support. We supported them in Libya, right up to and including their gruesome murder of the Libyan leader, Gaddafi. Nobody in the British media shed a tear for the murder of that politician. Neither would they have if these people had gotten into the presidential palace in Damascus and murdered the Syrian president in the same way. We supported them in Iraq. Imagine. None of them shed a tear for the judicial murder of the Iraqi leader. We support them in China, where we call it a Uyghur genocide, when in fact it is the local chapter of Al-Qaeda and ISIS that the Chinese government is confronting. We supported them in Chechnya because we didn't like the president of Russia. We have supported them in Afghanistan, perhaps most extraordinarily. Let me be clear with you. I am not neutral when it comes to these Islamist fanatic extremists. Not for me, the idea that my enemy's enemy is my friend. If my enemy's enemy is worse than my enemy, then I'm prepared to unite with my enemy to destroy the enemy's enemy where the enemy is worse. And the second reason, and this is the part that lefties won't like, the second reason that we can't discuss what actually appears to have happened is that since David Amiss lay on the ground, his life's blood ebbing away, being refused, incidentally, the last rites of the Catholic Church by an idiot police officer that said it's a crime scene, you can't go in, to a priest with oils seeking to grant the de facto default last wish of any dying Roman Catholic. But since that blood was shed on Friday, hundreds of fighting age, mainly Muslims, have landed on the beaches of the south coast of England. Most of them will be harmless, except for the £80 a night the British taxpayer will pay for many years to put them up in a hotel, they having fled from war-torn, famine-stricken France. But most of these people landing on these beaches, many of them Muslim, are young, fighting-age men, amongst whom there can, might, probably will be others who might take a knife into a surgery or into the parliament or into the shopping centre or down the high street to murder your mother or mine. We can't talk about that because we aren't doing anything about that. And 300 landed from Friday till now, Sunday night. Twice as many have landed this year as landed last year, and it's only October. So for these two reasons, we would rather push the actual issue, the elephant in the room, into the corner, out of sight. and put the blame on Facebook. Demand more censorship. Demand more policing of political speech. Close down more accounts. Throttle more freedoms that exist in this country. I'll tell you what's got to change here. Not us. It's not our way of life that has to change. It's the terrorists that have to change. And if they won't, they have to be locked up. They have to be deported. And on the battlefields abroad, they have to be destroyed. We did nothing wrong. We just exercised our rights as a free country. And now we're being asked to murder those rights in the wake of the murder of an MP. We're being told no more surgeries. I sat in surgeries for almost 30 years, every single weekend. Met thousands upon thousands of constituents who had the right to see me and ask me for my help. We mustn't change that. If we begin to change that, what do we have? A bloated political caste, armored against proper criticism and analysis by new anti-free speech laws and regulations. We don't want our democracy to die with David Amiss, do we? If your answer to that is yes, we do, you need to take a long, hard look at yourself. And then there's the question of double standards. Why am I wearing a hat? Because somebody tried to kill me in broad daylight, and nobody gave a toss about it. Not even the judge that sent him to jail, who made it about me while sending someone who hospitalized me to prison. And not one section of the British media and political class said that. And when I asked the Speaker of the House of Commons, the dwarfish Bercow, for protection, he refused it. When I asked him for permission to be able to protect myself, he refused it because it was only me. And they hated me and my politics. They would have preferred that the man that attacked me hadn't done so, but because they liked his politics, they did nothing about it. And only Peter Oborne, then of the BBC, pointed out, whilst I was still bleeding, that this sort of thing could catch on, you know. And the next person to be attacked, the next person to be nearly murdered, the next person to be murdered might be somebody you like rather than somebody you hate.